What's going on, guys? Good morning. Hope all is well. Today, I'm gonna be doing a video lining a flash sheet. This is a 7x10 Arches cold press using a B6 nib with a mahogany holder or stem. I don't really know what the correct term is. And these are designs originally by Ed Hardy in the 70s and repainted by me. So we're starting off rough, starting off with a blob of a dot. So, in all honesty, I think using a nib is my least favorite way of lining flash because it is so unforgiving, I guess. There's so many factors that go into using a nib that make it extremely challenging to get it to look clean and uniform. And I have this mental struggle, I suppose, because as frustrating as that is for me, the inconsistencies are what attract me to using the nib. And every once in a while I get on a pretty good run where I'm pulling consistent clean lines, and I guess that glimpse gives me more motivation to continue practicing with the nib, but it is the most frustrating way to go about painting tattoo flash, in my opinion. So this is a speedball nib. I'm not sure what the other brands are that are out there, but yeah. Wayne, sorry, my dog was licking the ground. I will say it looks a lot cleaner on camera than it does in person. And I'm realizing that perhaps some of the flash that I see on the internet that looks so clean and perfect, maybe that is a bit of an illusion because it's on camera. See, like, I'm on a pretty good run right here. One of the hard things about using a nib is you're not just controlling the direction of the line, but you're having to adjust your hand pressure, the amount of ink that's in the nib. And I guess that's one of the reasons why I use it as well, because in a lot of ways it is similar to using a tattoo machine, just in the sense that you have to focus on those aspects: hand pressure, speed, ink flow. So I guess one of the lessons that I've kind of learned is the more you search for convenience with this kind of stuff, the harder you actually end up making it for yourself. Because, like, I could be using Micron by Pigmo right now. First of all, the ink in that is not as dark as the ink that I'm using right now, which is PH Martin's Black Star. And also, using a Micron is almost too easy. It would probably look a lot cleaner. The lines wouldn't be as dark, but it would look a lot cleaner, I'm sure. I'd probably finish a lot faster. But at the same time, using this nib, I feel like could be teaching me something that I'd be missing by taking the easy way. And that might just be me. I still use a Micron for certain things or certain types of paper that would probably work better with that than this setup. But I really do feel that this method helps me with my tattooing more than any other system. Because kind of like skin, the roughness of this paper, the way it interacts with the nib it's not a similar feeling, but it's a similar challenge. And so it's a little bit easier for me to sort of pretend like I'm tattooing, if that makes sense. And that for me is the goal. The point of painting flash is to sort of simulate doing a tattoo, you know, without doing a tattoo. Like whenever I'm painting flash, I'm thinking about what needle groupings I would use, what type of needle I would use for the lines, and for the shading and all that. Also, part of the reason I paint flash is to understand where it all sort of comes from. And because unlike being an artist in other fields where, I mean, if you're a serious artist, you've probably gone through courses and done pretty extensive training to get to where you are. In tattooing, you can still be a fairly successful tattoo artist without having gone through some kind of rigorous program, which is what an apprenticeship is supposed to be. But those have kind of lost the essence of what they were, and the world is changing. So you kind of have the option to be a tattooer without really knowing anything about tattoo history and all that. And I think to be that kind of tattooer is just scratching the surface of what all of this really is and what it means to be a part of this tradition. So if you hear that, that's the yard guy. Ooh. See, one of the things I don't like about nibs is, like, you see this right here. There was some kind of dried ink somewhere that just randomly happened to come out, and I didn't realize it. So one thing about using a nib is you have to understand that you have to wipe them often. You have to wipe them often, and I keep a little cup of rubbing alcohol next to me, and I dip it in there occasionally to free up some of the debris. And then wipe. One thing too is I'm realizing that the tattoo artists with real legacy kind of live on through their flash. Because if you do a custom tattoo, it's just for that person and that's it. It's one and done. Nobody else is gonna do that tattoo. Nobody else. It ends with that person. And that's great. But also, when you do flash, then you give other artists the opportunity to spread your name and your work and share, your contribution even long after you're gone, like Sailor Jerry, every once in a while I might see a picture of a tattoo done by him, but for the most part, I just see his flash and I just hear about his flash. So that right there tells you that that's kind of how your legacy gets carried on. And I'm realizing as well that it seems that the people who really care about the spirit of tattooing and the tradition of tattooing also paint flash, because that's just part of what being a tattooer has sort of always been. And because there's so much business for custom work, a lot of people don't see the point in making flash. They just do custom stuff. But for me, painting flash is a way to sort of talk to the people that came before me and to honor them, learn from them, because you can teach yourself a lot, but you can't know what you don't know. What you don't know, you don't know what you don't know. And the only way to find out what you really don't know is to learn from other people. It's also a way to remind yourself that this isn't always about the money. Being an artist is about creating and being able to make something manifest. This sheet is manifestation occurring in real time. Yeah, I reference the images, but the way that I put them together on this sheet is a 1 of 1. The way my hand moves is a 1 of 1. The exact stain on this paper, 1 of 1. That's what being an artist is all about, is the fact that we can make something that's new exist. We can bring something from potential into existence. And that's the reason why we do this. Because that's a gift to be able to do that. It truly is. Another thing, for me, I'm a second year tattooer. I started my second year this year. And I did get my minor in fine art in college, which I understand not a lot of tattooers did that, because it is a different type of art that you can't learn in school. But what art school did teach me was how to learn like an artist. And in art school, it was a requirement to take art history, because that's a fundamental aspect of being an artist and knowing what world you're in. So it's a little bit disrespectful, in my opinion, to come into tattooing thinking because you can copy an image well from the internet that you don't really owe anything to. There's just a lot of people that are just not, their mindset is oriented like a businessman, not like an artist. And I get it. I get it, because that's what tattooing is. It's a business. You're making products for people and providing a service. You're not making something gut-wrenchingly from the soul. Or you are. But in my opinion, part of that comes from being so deeply connected to the root and the spirit of tattooing. I don't know of any extremely talented painters that don't have old masters that they look up to and have studied. But yet, there are so many tattoo artists that they don't care about that stuff. It's of no interest to them, really. So that is where I find a little bit of a difference between me and some of the other tattooers that I've met along the way. And that's fine. That's different strokes for different folks. Okay, we're at 23 minutes. I was not expecting it to take this long. But like I said earlier, using a nib is a much more tedious process than a regular pen. You know, one thing that I have kind of noticed is like a fundamental difference between the world of tattooing and the world of fine art is for sure the level of refinement in the way people view what art is. And also I thought that the fine art world was egotistical, but in my opinion, the tattoo world has a lot of people who think extremely highly of themselves and their work that is really only appreciated and recognized as good work in the tattoo world. So, for example, there are a lot of tattoo style paintings that are deemed as top-notch, incredible work, but they don't actually display a good understanding for things like motif and symmetry, dynamic symmetry, or certain things like, you know, the Baroque or Sinister line following classical painting techniques. So, and I've noticed that a lot of tattooers, when they're working on the body, they're mentioning things like flow and direction. And because the paper is just a flat surface, they kind of don't know what to do on paper. It's just like one, you know, it might be a giant skull with a lot of effects and stuff like that, but there's not a message that's being conveyed. You know, maybe in Japanese work, because it's about a story, but even then, a lot of the pieces that I've seen, that story's not really conveyed in the work. It's something that has to be explained because essentially it's just some images. You know, you have I don't know how else to really explain it, but because in a sense that's what all art is. It's just some images, but there's just a little bit more of a refinement in classical painting and art, and perhaps that's because it's been around longer and has been developed much more rigorously. People say that tattooing is one of the oldest art forms ever created, and tattooing is one of the oldest aspects of human nature, in a sense, that separated us sort of from like animals. But painting is much, much older than tattooing. And the purpose of painting is completely different. The intentions for making paintings, basically, tattooing started off as medicinal spiritual informational. It wasn't about the art, it was about the intention behind it. Painting was a way of expressing life, studying life, understanding life, sharing our perceptions of life. And in my opinion, that does a lot more for the collective. Tattooing is a very personal thing, and that's wonderful. But because it's a very personal thing, it's not going to get the same level of collective movement. It's pretty hard to put this into words, but what I'm saying is the tattoos that we have now, sure, Japan may have been doing them for a few hundred years in Japanese tattooing, but modern electric tattooing is that it's modern. And so because of that, there hasn't been enough time for the refinement that things like painting and drawing have had. Also, I find it funny that tattooers prefer tattooing over something like painting because they say it lasts a lifetime. What other medium can do that? And I'm like, paintings can last thousands of years. Paintings can transcend all kinds of, it's a different level of refinement in fine art that I will say, in my opinion, will forever trump over tattooing. And I think because it's had such refinement for so long, there's really less ego involved. It becomes less about who's better than who and more just getting to be a part of the school of painting and exploring who you are as an artist and finding that. Tattooing, because it's so new, there's so much ego involved. Everyone wants to reinvent the wheel, and then with social media, it's easier to see and comprehend a tattoo on an Instagram post than a real intense painting. And tattooing is just very popular right now with the rise of individualism and being unique. Everyone wants to sort of express their individuality right now in a way that can't really be done other than by getting a tattoo. And so it's a booming business right now. A lot of people say it's slow. The money might be a little bit slow, but the number of people wanting to have tattoos is steadily increasing. And so because of that, there's just so much potential. I think also because tattooing is such a limited art form, because of how new it is, what was I gonna say? Because of how limited tattooing is, it's a lot easier to become a standout artist, I guess. Because when you're a painter, you don't just have a job of making a structurally correct painting. You have the responsibility to make something that is uniquely from you. It's your painting. And then, because it's from you, completely from you, there's a chance that nobody is going to like that. When it comes to tattooing, you can be considered a prolific tattooer without ever making anything original, really. You get to choose your school. You want to be a traditional artist, you want to be a Japanese artist, you want to do realism, and you just have to really study that. Because honestly, tattoos are products. You're making products. You're being a good craftsman and a good designer so that you can make a product that sells. The paintings that live on forever may have been commissioned by someone important, but the reason why they're so valuable and cared for so many centuries is because we view it as a contribution to humanity. Like I said earlier, a tattoo, once that leaves the shop, that person could get hit by a bus and that's the end of the tattoo. Painting the Mona Lisa, everyone can come and look at it. It can be experienced by crowds and stuff, and it's not just a design. It's a moment in time. It's just another level of depth that requires a refinement in understanding. And that's why a lot of people aren't into fine art but love tattoo art, because they they're more interested in good design, they're more interested in a good product than they are in the evolution of human consciousness and the depth of our history and humanity. And I get it. But I think a lot of people put too much value on themselves as a tattoo artist and their work. And I think a lot of those people, maybe myself included, became tattooers because we weren't good enough to keep up in the fine art world. I plan on both. But it's a lot easier to be a good tattooer than it is to be a good painter, in my opinion. And a lot of people in the tattoo world will say just because you're a good painter doesn't mean you can tattoo. And there is truth in that, because tattooing requires a very specific type of skill set. But I don't know. I'm rambling to try and make this go by as fast as possible. It always takes way longer than I anticipate every time. And see, I forgot to be dipping my nib in alcohol and wiping it down occasionally, and so it built up and got dry, and now it's making me pull bad lines, and I'm having to go back and fix it. And that's what I was saying earlier about trading convenience. You just can't, because you're gonna have to pay for it in one way or another. So you might as well choose the minor inconvenience so that you're not faced with a greater inconvenience down the road. Such as it's convenient to use a different pen for lining, but if I'm subconsciously applying that type of mindset to my tattooing, I'm actually doing myself a disservice. So I would say if you're a seasoned tattooer, you've been doing this for a while, then you use whatever you want. And for those of us who are newer, we shouldn't see that as, oh, if they're doing it like that, we can do it too. Because those of us who are new to this need to be doing anything that it takes to become better at what we're doing, no matter how inconvenient it may seem. At some point, I'm going to be so used to the steps I have to take for my nib maintenance during lining that it's going to become second nature, and it's not going to be such an inconvenience for me. But there it is. That's the flash sheet lined up. Let me take my stuff out. Bam. And then I'm gonna shade this and color it.